The easing of COVID-19 travel restrictions could fuel terrorist groups to revisit plots put on hold during the pandemic. Singapore's Internal Security Department says it includes plots against the country. In its latest annual terrorism threat report, the ISD warns that the threat remains high, even while there are currently no specific and credible intelligence of an imminent attack against Singapore. Now, for more, Alif Amshad joins us live. Alif, give us a sense of where these security threats are, according to the report.
Well, John, these terror groups are near and far and have not kept still during the pandemic. Now, let's take Indonesia, for example. The Jemaah Islamiyah, or JI, remains resilient despite crackdowns by local authorities. Now, the ISD report says JI is expected to persist with its outreach activities to raise funds and recruit new members through schools and mosques, for example. It has also tried to infiltrate political parties and mainstream religious groups. Now, in southern Philippines, militant factions continue to engage security forces in insurgent-style armed clashes. And all these groups pose immediate threat through their ability to mount attacks in the region, including Singapore. Now, further away, in Afghanistan, with the Taliban now in power, regional Islamist militants could make their way there as it's a safe haven for them. Now, basically, ease of travel now means terrorist fighters can go to new conflict zones and hotspots or return home after being stranded.
Well, those are very much external threats. Did the authorities sort of highlight, what the main domestic terrorism angle is like here in Singapore?
Well, in Singapore, the main threat would be the self-radicalized people, now described as the primary driver of domestic terrorism threat. Now, they go online and are influenced by foreign preachers and their radical ideologies. Now, here are some stats. Since 2015, there have been 45 self-radicalized people dealt with under the Internal Security Act. 33 of them are Singaporeans, and the latest, a 29-year-old detained in April. He had considered to joining the Taliban militants in Afghanistan, and the authorities are definitely keeping a close watch on this group.
Today, with the prevalence of the online domain being used by many of these terrorist groups, this transformative power of technology has certainly facilitated the recruitment of individuals within our region. So yes, in the near future, it poses certainly an area that needs increasing effort to look into and assess.
So we've covered the local threat, we've covered the external threats as well. And bearing all that in mind, what is Singapore doing to enhance its counter-terrorism capabilities?
Well, two broad ways. Firstly, the use of hardware. So we're talking about drones, more police cameras, conducting more anti-terrorism exercises, which typically involves multiple agencies. But perhaps equally important, it's also about the people. So that means getting the community to play its part, identifying and reporting threats. Now, for example, the SG Secure movement, house visits by home team officers. Now, we also have roadshows to build awareness and pick up emergency preparedness skills. Now, last year, there was a survey to gauge public sentiments. Now, almost half believe that Singapore is a target for terrorist attacks. 88% agreed that countering terrorism is a shared responsibility and not just the government's job. 65% said they are trained in emergency preparedness skills and can perform CPR or first aid, for example. So yes, getting the community involved is crucial.
A lot has to do with looking at not only legislation, but looking at how the community can work together as part of the broader remit in trying to mitigate the threat of terrorism within the community and broader Singapore for sure. So while there is no imminent threat, we cannot always rule out the fact that you won't have an individual.
Well, the report also lays out what makes up the strongest defense, like collective vigilance, preparedness and resilience, that along with a zero-tolerance approach to all forms of hate speech and extremist rhetoric.
Alif, thanks very much for that update. We've been speaking there with our reporter Alif Amshad, who was giving us the latest annual terrorism threat report by the ISD.